welcome or welcome back to my channel. For those who don't know me, my name is Katharine, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about all of the books I read in September. I can't believe it's October already, September, and just this whole year has really flown by. I can't believe this year is almost over. I feel like the year just started like last month, but here we are in October. So I'm going to be talking about all the books I read in September. Buckle in tight because this whole reading wrap up is quite a mess. I had a lot of DNFs. Honestly, I'm not going to talk about the DNFs in this video in detail. I'm actually going to put a screenshot right here for you of all of the DNFs that I had this month in September because of the fact that I don't want to waste any more time talking about these books. I've been in such a reading slump, and these books did not help me in getting out of that reading slump. They either had like demonic themes to them, or I just was not feeling them, or they had bad writing. But anyways, those are the books that I DNF'd or did not finish, if you do not know what DNF means. But anyway, you can find my full in-depth reviews about why I specifically DNF'd or did not finish each specific book on my Goodreads account, and I can link my Goodreads account down below. Anyways, let's get back into the books that I actually read in September. So the first book that I fully finished in September was Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I counted this towards my one classic that I had to read in the month. I have a goal for myself this year that I want to read one classic and one nonfiction per month. So Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen was the classic that I read for the month of September. I gave this 4.5 stars. I loved the characters. I loved the whole entire book, the plot, everything, the prose, the way it was written. Beautifully done. It was such an amazing story. The only reason why I gave it a 4.5 star instead of a 5 star is because of the fact that although the prose were beautifully done, I'm just not used to the way it was written during the time in which it was written, if that makes sense. This was obviously written during the 1800s when Jane Austen was still with us and alive, but the fact of the matter is just the language that was used during that time is a little confusing to me, and that's why I hesitate to read, classics in general because of the language that's used. I don't like to think that I'm stupid or dumb, but like sometimes the language in which they use in those types of books is a little confusing to me. So that's why I gave it 4.5 stars instead of 5 stars. I did grow up like watching like movie adaptations of Pride and Prejudice, but just never read the book. So I thought it was appropriate at the the ripe old age of 29 to read it. So I really enjoyed it. I would love to get a physical copy of it. I actually do over here in like these little Macmillan classic editions, but they're like these like little tiny hardback classic editions of it, and I didn't want to take it out because they look just so pretty there on the shelf. I want like a papered back edition, if that makes sense, so that I can like physically flip through it, and I probably want to annotate it sometime because it was just an awesome book and I really want to reread it sometime. The next book that I fully finished was a thriller book. It's considered a psychological thriller, and it's called Saving Noah by Lucinda Berry. I've been wanting to read a Lucinda Berry book. I can't even speak today. But anyways, I've been wanting to read a Lucinda Berry book for a long time, okay? Because she's like a very well-renowned like thriller author. But I gave this book 2 stars because for those who don't know anything about this book, which it's a pretty popular book, so if you haven't heard about it already, are you living under a rock? Never mind. No, actually, I actually didn't hear about this book until recently, probably within this last 6 months. But anyways, It's about this guy. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on YouTube, but I'm gonna do it anyway. He was a pedophile, okay? He molested two young girls. He was a high schooler when this happened, so he was like, what, like 15, 16, 17 years old, around that age range. And he was teaching a swimming class to some elementary school students, and he molested two children in that class, two young girls. And basically the whole entire book, it basically is told from the point of view of the mother, actually, of him. And the reason why I gave it 2 stars is because, first of all, it shouldn't even be classified as a psychological thriller, even though it says that like everywhere. I would consider it, I don't even know if this is even a genre, but I would consider it like a dark literary fiction, because it explores basically, for the most part throughout this book, the grief of the mother finding out this about her son, of her son being a pedophile. And it's not very like twisty and turny. There's not any like head snapping moments. There's not a lot of twists and turns, if that makes sense. Not very, I don't know. It wasn't very like stereotypical in terms of what a thriller book in my mind is, if that makes sense. I just didn't find it to be necessarily like a stereotypical thriller. But anyways, I just didn't like the fact that for the majority of the book, well, actually throughout the whole entire book, the mother was justifying the kid, or yeah, the high school student and his actions. She was basically making him out to be the victim rather than the 2 young girls being the victims. And that's why I gave it 2 stars. But that's essentially what I gave that book, Saving Noah by Lucinda Berry, 2 stars. The next book that I ended up finishing was another thriller. I don't know if it's a psychological thriller, but it's definitely a thriller. And that's The Fourth Monkey by J.D. Barker. I gave this one 3 stars. It's essentially about this guy who is a serial killer, and he just doesn't kill any type of person. He kills people who have done bad things. And the book, essentially, the whole premise is like, you know that monkey saying where it's like the emojis that you see on your iPhone? It's like, hear no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil. And like this fourth monkey that the title of the book assumes is like, do no evil. So it's not just listen, speak, or hear. It's the fourth monkey is actually doing evil. So I found the title of the book very intriguing in that way, but essentially the whole entire book kind of gave me FBI, CIA type feelings, and it reminded me a lot of Breaking Bad, the TV show, if you're familiar. I actually never watched Breaking Bad, but from what I assume, that's kind of the feeling that you get from it, that it's very like CIA, like FBI, like trying to figure out who the bad guy is type of a situation. And that's kind of how this book is. It's very much like that. I just am not a big what am I talking about? I'm not a big Breaking Bad or like FBI, CIA type of a person. That's not how I genuinely or really like my thrillers. I really like my thrillers to be like, I don't know how to describe it, but the way I like my thrillers are kind of like the fluffy type of thrillers where it's very head-snapping, very intriguing, very addicting to read. It may not be like the best book that I've ever read, but it certainly captures my attention, and there's not a lot of brain cells being used when reading it, if that makes sense. I'm just here for the thriller for a good time, if that makes sense. Like, I just want to feel something. I like thrillers that just are a good palate cleanser, like especially if I'm in a reading slump like I am, and it can just kind of boost my love of reading and make me feel something again in the books that I'm reading, if that makes sense. So this genuinely just wasn't it. It made me think a lot, and I just, if you like that, like, good on you, but like, it's just not my cup of tea. It also is very gory, and it described a lot of the very violent scenes that were going on, and I just didn't like that. Like, I would prefer not to know about that. That's why I'm not a nurse or a doctor. I thought about being a nurse at one point in my life, but then I realized I didn't like the sight of blood, so I was just like, no thank you. But anyways, let's head to the next book that I read during the month of September. The next book that I completed during the month of September was You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Geneva Rose. I gave this 4 stars. Again, this is a type of thriller that I'm looking for, okay? This is essentially an Airbnb trip gone wrong, okay? It's about this girl who is like a very much workaholic. She lives in New York City and she travels out to Wyoming to this Airbnb, and essentially it's not one of those Airbnbs where you have the whole place to yourself. She essentially does the Airbnb option where it's just renting a room, essentially, and the guy who owns the house is like living there while she's staying there as well, and things just get creepy from there. Like, there seems to be like a romantic type of a plot line going on in it, but then you soon find out that it's not gonna go that way, and you'll have to find out what goes on in the book by reading it, because I'm not going to tell you anything else because it is a thriller and I don't want to spoil it for you. But the next book, also a great thriller read, was The Tenant by Frida McFadden. And I wanted to read this because I heard that there's a movie adaptation coming out about this, and I wanted to read it. Again, I don't know if I mentioned the rating of this. I think I did. 4 stars. I gave this 4 stars because it was just that great. Again, it's just very addicting. I like all of the Frida McFadden books that I've read so far, and she just, like, even though they're not the best books I've ever read, they're definitely very addicting and keep me wanting to read. So essentially, as you can tell by the title of this book, it's called The Tenant. It's about someone who rents out a room in someone's house. So this guy and his wife are basically, you know, financially not well. The guy, the main male character, he was like a vice president of this big corporation in New York City, and he ends up getting fired, and they live in one of those like really fancy brownstone type houses in New York City, and it's a very expensive mortgage, as you can assume. And when he gets fired, they're obviously very tight on money, so they have this girl rent out one of the rooms in their brownstone to kind of make up for the financial losses that they have had. And things just get creepy from there. There's a lot of suspicious activity going on, and again, I don't want to talk too much further about this book because I don't want to spoil anything for you, but just know that this book did go down a very addicting and very thrillery type way, and I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait for the movie to come out. The next book that I finished, I considered as my nonfiction for the month, and that's Loving Jesus, Mother Teresa by Jose Luis Gonzalez Balado. I am sorry if I totally butchered that last name, but basically this book was put together by this Jose guy, right? And it's basically like a collection of Mother Teresa's speeches and writings and things of that nature, basically pertaining to how to love Jesus more through doing good works, because it's basically off of the Bible verse is like, if you love the least of these, you're loving me. And I gave this book 2 stars. Unfortunately, I grew up Catholic, for those who don't know, and I really admired Mother Teresa and the work that she did in India as a nun. And I still do. I do appreciate and admire her for the things that she did for the least of those, you know, the very poor of the poor in India. And she did a lot of great things in her life and advocated for a lot of different things like abortion and so forth. Like, she did not want abortion legal whatsoever, which I really admire as well. But this just had a lot of things that I don't necessarily agree with in this book, or in Catholicism in general. That's why I left the Catholic Church. I now go to a non-denominational church, and a few things that I guess I'll mention here. I don't really want to get too much into it, but a few things that I have problems with in the Catholic Church is, like, basically you earning your way to heaven through your good works, and then also praying to saints and to Mary and things of that nature. And first of all, we wouldn't need Jesus or the cross if we could just earn our way into heaven. Like, basically Jesus and the cross is null and void if we could just earn our way into heaven. We can't earn our way into heaven, okay? We need the saving power of Jesus Christ on the cross and rising again on the third day in order to be saved. We need to believe and obey that and repent of our sins in order to be saved. So there was just a few different, like, sayings or things that she said or did that basically align more with the Catholic Church's view on how to get to heaven. And I didn't appreciate that. And then she mentioned a few things about praying to saints and to Mary and things. And I'm just like, you don't need to pray to Mary or the saints. Like, we have the great intercessor, which is Jesus. We don't need all these other intercessors in order to talk to God. Like, we can talk directly to Jesus because he died on the cross for us, okay? Anyways, the next book that I completed was Me, Stories of My Life by Katharine Hepburn. I guess I could have counted this also towards my nonfiction for the month. And I was really interested in reading this book because of the fact that I was named after Katharine Hepburn. She is an old-time Hollywood actress, and I get the spelling of my name from her. That's why my name, Katharine, is spelled a little bit differently. But anyways, I gave this 3 stars. I really enjoyed it for the most part. I liked hearing her life from her own eyes. And I actually listened to the audiobook of this on YouTube. It's free, actually, on YouTube, and it's narrated by her, which was super cool to listen to. But I just overall felt that the book was kind of scattered, and it also was so choppy to the point where I was like, I wanted to know more about her life. I didn't get all of the aspects of her life that I wanted to learn about, so that's why I gave it 3 stars. And then the next book that I completed, which I'm really excited to talk about, is From Sand and Ash by Amy Harmon. You'll see a video next week about me talking about a reading vlog of, like, reading until I get a 5-star read, and this was a 5-star read for me. It is essentially about this man and woman in Italy during World War II, so it's a historical fiction book, and Amy Harmon just has beautiful writing. Like, she really reminds me of the way Francine Rivers writes, if you're familiar. Francine Rivers is one of my favorite authors of all time, if you're not familiar with that fact about me. Francine Rivers has multiple books that are some of my all-time favorite books, and she's a Christian fiction author, but Amy Harmon is a Christian in her personal life, but she doesn't necessarily write Christian fiction, if that makes sense. Her books are not classified as Christian fiction, and she does not classify herself as a Christian fiction author, even though she herself is a Christian. And this book, like I mentioned, has great writing, really reminds me of Francine Rivers. And this book is essentially about, like I was mentioning, takes place during World War II, a man and a woman in Italy during that time. It talks a lot about the reign and rule of Mussolini, and then the Nazi Germany's, what am I talking about? Also, like, Nazi Germany taking over after Mussolini, And it essentially follows these two people. They grow up together. One is named Eva, and she's an Italian Jew. And then there's Angelo, who is Catholic, and they grow up in the same household. They're not biologically related whatsoever, but essentially Angelo's grandparents are the, like, owners of this house. It's almost like an estate, and they live in Florence, I believe, and they have, of course, these people who work for their household. They're almost like a butler and a maid, and Eva's grandparents are those people. So Eva's grandparents works for Angelo's grandparents, and they both, Angelo and Eva, live with their grandparents. So they basically like had a brotherly and sisterly type relationship growing up, even though they weren't blood related. And as you can assume, as they grow older and become teenagers and young adults, they fall in love because they're just such in close proximity to each other. Even though they do have very different takes on, like, basically every sort of thing, because of the fact that she's Jewish and he is Catholic, but life kind of just takes them their separate ways. Though he becomes a Catholic priest, and as you can assume, like, being an Italian Jew, she is in a lot of danger in terms of her life, like being taken away to either like a concentration camp or a work camp. And he, Angelo, ends up taking her in to his church and hiding her, and the story just goes from there. I don't want to give too much away, otherwise it's going to be spoilery, but just know that this love story and just the overall plot line of this book is so beautiful, and I wish I could reread it again. Like, I want to reread it right now, actually, but I can't because I have so much on my TBR or to be read list already, and I want to get to those books too. But just know that if you're at all interested in like historical fiction, please read this. Like, Amy Harmon just knows how to write, and I can't wait to read more of her books. This book actually solidified that she is one of my favorite authors, because I like to give authors at least like 2 or 3 chances in order to become my favorite author, and this was my 3rd book by her. I read Where the Lost Wander by her last year around this time, and then I also read earlier on this year in April her other book called What the Wind Knows, and both of those were like 5 or 6 star reads. I just can't get enough of her books and her writing. I can't wait to read more by her. And the last book that I read in September was a thriller book. It's called Tell Me What You Did by Carter Wilson. I gave this 3 stars. It's essentially about this girl who's a podcast host. She has her own podcast, and I don't know if this is, let me see if this is told in the synopsis of this book, because I don't want to like spoil anything for you. Okay, so this is not a spoiler. So basically the main female character, her name is Poe, and that kind of got me in the first place. I'm like, why is this girl named Poe? P-O-E. I guess it's sort of similar to like Edgar Allan Poe, the poet, but it's just a very interesting name. I've never like known a female named Poe before. Like, these authors and their like, I guess their creativity when it comes to making character names, but it's like, why can't you just use normal names? Like, my name is pretty common, it's Katharine. Like, why can't you call a character Katharine or Joseph or Thomas or something normal? Like, I don't know, like, that first of all is just weird. That has nothing to do with the rating, but basically I just looked on the synopsis, and this is not a spoiler. Basically, the main female character's mom is murdered, okay? And that was when she was like in middle school. And now that she has this true crime podcast that she hosts, she like basically like interviews these people who have done these crimes. And this guy who comes onto her show basically comes on and says like, I am the one that murdered your mom, and it just like goes downhill from there. And like it's this whole thing of like trying to find out like if he is actually the murderer of her mom and all this and that and the other thing. And the reason why I gave it 3 stars is because of the fact that the main female character was pretty unlikable. Like, I wasn't rooting for her to find the killer of her mom, and I wasn't really like a big fan of her personality, and just in general, she just was not the best person to like follow around. And also like the whole plot line was just very predictable in general. Like, I kind of saw what was coming. There wasn't like a lot of like head snapping moments. It was just average to me. It was just kind of mid, and it was okay. Like, it had me listening. I would listen to it on audiobook or on audio, whatever that terminology is. But anyways, I listened to it on audio via an audiobook, whatever. And it kept me intrigued enough to keep on listening, but it wasn't like the most like addictive book that I've ever read. Not like Frida McFadden level, if that makes sense. But anyway, those are the books that I read in September. I want to know what you read in September. I always enjoy listening to what other people read in the months and the years. And I just love what people are reading in general, okay? I just love hearing what people have been reading. But anyways, do all the YouTube things that you know how to do. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!